All right, joining us now here on In the Circle on D1 Softball. We've had her on before. In fact, we had her on right when she made the U.S. Olympic team for Tokyo, and honored to have her back. Of course, she's a two-time Olympian, three-time world champion, was the National Player of the Year in college softball in 2007, holds the NCAA Division I record in strikeouts and wins, is an author, and now a color commentator. It's a lot of titles, but she's well earned there. I speak of the great Monica Abbott. Honored to be joined
Hi,
here on the. How you doing?
I'm doing so good. Thanks for having me. It's so good to be back on, and I'm happy to, venture into this new ESPN TV commentating.
Well, that's what I wanted to start with because you've been doing a lot of stuff since we last had you on the pod. But let's start with that. You've been doing commentary. You just made your debut back on April 6th doing Mississippi State, South Carolina. As we're recording this, you're preparing to do NC State, Virginia on ACC Network this week. And then you still got Virginia and Virginia Tech on April 23rd and Missouri and South Carolina on May 4th. You made this announcement on all over your social media platforms where everybody's like, whoa. So, and the question everybody's asked me since and I've been curious, is what got you interested in broadcasting?
Well, I will say, you might not know this, but I actually majored in communications at Tennessee. So I'm an avid public speaker. I've done tons of those. Obviously, it worked really well through my sport, being able to share my story and write the book Rise and Shine and Abbott's A-List, some of those things that have shown my career throughout over the years. I think commentating for me was a natural next step, because there's no way softball wasn't going to be involved in my life, and I had to figure out ways to share my information. I played for a long time at the highest of highest levels, but one thing that I'm proud about in my career is, while I continued to play after college, my game continued to grow. I went from I developed another drop ball. I threw harder, in my 30s. And when I was playing for Toyota or Team USA, I threw harder then than I ever did in college. And being able to have that insight of what it takes to take athletes to the next level, and what that X factor is for them to really come through and compete in those big moments in college, I felt like, what better way to share insights, what better way to celebrate these future stars.
So, is this a situation where you reach out to ESPN and you say, "Hey, maybe I'm interested in broadcasting if ever an opportunity plays out"? How did it all come about to the point now where you getting again a chance to get some games under your belt?
Well, when I officially retired, I kind of took some time I released Rise and Shine, the book that I wrote about my career. And then I took some time to kind of figure out what I wanted to do, right? Where do I want to put myself in next? Did I want to jump into coaching D1? Did I want to coach a smaller school? Did I want to open my own facility? Like, where exactly did I want to go? And the more I thought about it, the more I realized, like, I wanted more impact at more of an elite level of athlete. So unfortunately, there's not a huge opportunity professionally where I could go and make a living coaching a pro team or being a GM of a pro team. So the next level would be that collegiate level. So I really wanted to have an impact there. I sent some feelers out to some friends at ESPN, and then it kind of all happened pretty quick after that.
How did you feel in the booth doing the Mississippi State South Carolina game? That was your first game nationally for the ESPN. There, you worked with Kevin Fitzgerald. I watched it. You sounded excited. I'm just curious, what's it like being in that booth minutes before going on air, and how'd you feel compared to being in the circle and pitching?
I was excited. I was excited to be there. I was living in the moment and excited to be able to talk about some of the stories and the research of the athletes that I had done, or things that I had been watching throughout their season thus far, to be able to lift them up in those ways. It was fun to even discuss, and I hate to say it, but when things go wrong, right? Like when things go wrong on the softball field, we've all been there. I've been there, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I'm not perfect. But when things go wrong and being able to discuss that in a positive light on things that, I remember one topic I said was, instead of thinking about, hey, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, I didn't do this, think about, what do I need to do on this next pitch? And working on those little things in your mindset that can ultimately change the outcome of a pitch or your success in that next big moment.
Well, that's the uniqueness. You've experienced everything as a player. So you can relate to every player on there. That's the beauty of the color commentator role, is you've experienced just about everything, good, bad, and different, from players on the field. So you can relate to that and explain that to the audience, what's going on the field, that not really other people can do that haven't played the game. That's the beauty of that role. And I'm assuming as you get more games in there, you dive into the strategic part of it is something that you enjoy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think strategy is going to be super important, especially coming up in this weekend's game that I'm doing, Virginia versus NC State. Virginia is a bubble team right now in the RPI, so they really need to get some big wins to be able to make the postseason play. So I think just strategy for them and how they're using their pitchers and manufacturing runs is going to be really important for them to continue to be successful. So being able to speak to that when they do it and how Coach Harden chooses to do it will be a lot of fun.
The thing, and I told you this a little bit off the air before we started, was what jumped out to me listening to you was the passion and the excitement you had there to be there. Because a lot of times commentators will come out there, you could tell they're just kind of going through the motions, or hey, they're kind of be monotone, but you have a passion for the game that I thought showed on the broadcast. There. Is that accurate there, that passion? Is that part of it too? You want to be around the game because now you're not playing, but you still want to be around that game because you love the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it lives in you, right? Like softball lives in me. It lights me up. It makes me excited. I get excited for pitchers when they throw great pitches. I get excited when hitters make good hits and have good at bats. I can see the effort and the determination in athletes to be successful for their team. And that is fun to watch. It's so entertaining. And yeah, it lights me up.
I know Karen Weekly, your former coach, and Megan Rhodes Smith, who I've talked to on the show, a former teammate, have told me that you still follow the game closely, to the point where in the past when you've talked to, when they've had you asked to talk to the tennis players, you know what's already going on around the team. And they're like, whoa, I can't put you on. The players are like blown away by that. Is that accurate, that you still follow the game pretty closely from that standpoint?
Well, definitely. And of course at Tennessee, I'm a little bit more invested, my alma mater, so I definitely follow a lot more closely to them. But I understand the investment, right? The investment mentally, the investment physically, the investment spiritually, and I think the investment inside our hearts as athletes, and what that means to bring it all together with one teammate, not to mention 20 other people on your team, and try to adjust things and change things that your coach is asking you to do, that grind and that investment that we do as athletes. So I understand what that feels like in all aspects of an individual. So it's easy for me to kind of put myself in their shoes, and because I've been there multiple times, and I've done it multiple times at multiple different levels. So I know what that moment felt like in college. I know what that moment felt like at the Olympics, at the pros, at club ball. So being able to relate to them at that level has been quite a blessing.
Very blessed. I thought of this when I saw you doing the Mississippi State-South Carolina game. Taryn Moat is the pitching coach in her first year at Mississippi State. I don't know if you interacted with her at all during the week, but for me, that was like a big deal because I got into softball. The first ever World Series I watched, I've told her this, and I don't think I've told you this, but I'll tell you now. The first World Series I ever watched was when you played Arizona, you and Taryn, Tennessee and Arizona, which is still one of the most watched softball games of all time. That got me hooked. Watching you two play, leading Tennessee, that was leading him to the World Series. He had just won the first ever SEC championship for Tennessee. Won the National Player of the Year. That was so to me. That was kind of like wild. Did you interact with her at all? And you know, I don't know if you reminisce of when you have talked to her in the past or recently. I mean, that was a pretty monumental moment for the game for what you both your teams did that year.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people still talk to me about how that was one of the first World Series they really watched, and it made them fall in love with the game, and they've been watching softball ever since. Is that Tennessee versus Arizona Women's College World Series final? Yeah, I thought it was so fun that I got to. Taryn was in, the pitching coach at Mississippi State, and that I was my first game announcing. I got to kind of talk about her impact as a pitching coach since she's left. And, Taryn and I have been good friends over the years. We played together professionally for the Chicago Bandits. And I've followed her as through her coaching career from Ole Miss to Arizona, and some of the younger pitchers that she's brought up, as far as like Alyssa Denham, Taylor McQuillan. And then it's so fun to see the protege of Aspen Wesley coming in, the Mississippi State pitcher.
Yeah.
She literally is throwing the changeup that Taryn Mott threw. She's living and dying on that changeup just like Taryn did. And it's fun to see that impact cross generations and trickle into the next athlete.
That's a great point. You picked up on that. I noticed that too, and I've seen Aspen throw in this year. And it's like, oh, that changeup's a little different now. So you can tell the difference there. Having watched the game today, how do you feel about watching the game today? A lot of teams now use pitching staffs, committees, a little different than back in the day when you threw, and Megan Rhodes has joked about it. She had a nice seat to watching you pitch pretty much. That was her role. Occasionally would throw in, but it's a little different now. How do you feel about the game today?
From a pitching standpoint?
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of teams are going to pitching by committee, right? They're going one time through the lineup, two times, next time through the lineup they switch, third time through the lineup. But as much as teams are doing that, I do think there's still a lot of aces out there. And I think it's important to develop the ace, and especially in preseason play and early SEC or ACC or whatever conference you're in, because there is times when you're going to want to throw your number one, and that number one is going to have to face hitters more than one time through, more than two times through, more than three times through. And just as hitters get better through the lineup, when they face a pitcher multiple times, pitchers also get better, right?
Yes.
And it becomes more strategic in how you call your pitches and the order of the pitches that you throw. Now, if you don't really have like a strong ace, then being able to combo a pitcher with speed and maybe a changeup, you have two different pitchers, opposites or high and low type of pitchers, then that can be really difficult on hitters as well, because, taking barrel up high to then switching to your next at bat barrel to dropping your barrel can be a difficult change for hitters to do quickly within a game. So I understand both aspects. I think depending on the team, and I love how like a Tennessee has a 1-2. I feel like they kind of have the 1-2 ace. Alabama has an ace. Florida has a 1-2 ace. So I like that aspect of having multiple aces. And then really the thing that I love, whether it's in pitching or across the field in softball right now, is coaches are doing a better job of creating roles, right? So there's larger rosters, 20 players, 25 athletes, even on some teams, but creating roles for athletes. So it creates more opportunity for, say, a number 3 pitcher like Missouri has a closer now,
Yeah.
and she's dominating, right? But she comes in the 7th inning, that's her role. A pinch runner that goes in to pinch run for a big hitter and then goes to the outfield to play a couple innings because she's good in that, a better outfielder than the other girl. Just creating these roles for athletes. I like watching that because it creates accountability for those athletes within the team, and it then therefore creates competition within a team and pushes your team further ahead.
There's so much technology too now in today's game. There's so much information. I'm curious if this was around, if this was available when you were pitching at Tennessee in the college game. How
Mhm.
much of this would you have used? Would you have just like, oh, this is great? Or were you one that didn't like all that? Because I know there are some softball players that think that sometimes that information could get to your head too much, that too much information could kind of throw you off, that, hey, I just want to throw, I just want to hit. What kind of player were you from that standpoint?
I think the information is so valuable, right? It's pushed our game forward. It's made our athletes better. More importantly, it's made our coaches better across the board, not only from, the college, but all the way down to our club and rec, right? Because the visibility, and those athletes that played under all that information in college are now taking that information to their club teams that they're coaching, to their daughters, to their rec teams, their individual and group classes or lessons that they teach. Myself personally, I can be honest, my freshman year, I really struggled with the technology piece, early in my collegiate career. But as I went through my career, I really learned how valuable it was for me. Not only for me they taught me how to read a hitter better, Coach Ralph and Karen Weekly, and at that time, Marty McDaniel, uh, they taught me how to read a hitter, but I was also able to see what I was doing, and the mistakes that I was making in either my form or in my pitches, and why that led to a hit. Why did that lead to a home run? Why did that lead to a walk? Why did this pitch floating over the middle of the plate, lead to the next pitch getting hit? So seeing that sort of data and as I developed through college really made a big impact on me and helped me really, really grow. So early in my career, I was a little bit resistant because I didn't understand it. But later in my career, I definitely grasped onto it. I understood it. It created better feel for myself. I understood the way my body moved, and I understood what I needed to do. And understanding what you need to do or what you're looking for or what you're trying to do is really powerful because it creates a better plan.
And that helped you, I'm assuming, extend your career from a professional career and the international game for so long. Like, when you announced your retirement, a lot of people are like, wait a minute, she could still pitch. What is she talk? What is she doing? Like, did that help you in that regard as well?
Oh yeah, I watched video all through. It definitely helped my form, just being, you can't have that long career. And like when I retired, I probably could have still thrown 75 plus, for 3, 4, 5 more years. But I knew at that time, like I was ready for the next phase. But I do think having the knowledge, having, the biometrics, knowing my own information made me more successful because I could adjust my body to carry the load, right? To carry the load of an ace, to carry like the load of 100 pitches in a game and not lose speed when I got to the 7th.
We're speaking with Monica Abbott here on In the Circle on D1 Softball. How has life been for you since retirement? What's it been like? Obviously, you're dangling here a little bit of commentary. We're going to talk about the book you came out with. You were an author a year ago. But what has life been like since you retired?
Yeah, it's been really fun, to be honest. It's nice just to be home a lot more, to be able to work on other projects that I wanted to do. For example, like release the book that I wrote with Debbie and Rob Shriver. I've been able to start to get my information out that made me good, which was really important to me. I felt like I needed to pass on the information and knowledge I had. And sometimes that's hard to do when you're playing because I don't know, it's just hard to do when you're playing
Because
because
you're
it's
still in it. You're still in the middle of
you're,
it.
you're
Yeah.
still in the middle of it. You're in it, right? So that was really hard for me to do while I was playing. So I was been really passionate about just getting more information and knowledge out there on different platforms and avenues. So yeah, I think it was good. It's been really good.
The best compliment is I remember when you made the announcement that you were retiring, people were caught off guard. I remember I was doing a UCF softball broadcast, and I told Cindy Beaumalone, who was the assistant coach in the U.S. national team that you got to work with at the World Games in Birmingham in 2020. She was shocked. She was like, wait a minute, what? Are you sure? Like she thought I was lying to her because she felt like you could play 2, 3, 4 more years.
Yeah.
What led to you mentioned that this did you know? Was there a time period there like in Birmingham? Did you know in the back of your mind this could be it? Like, was there a plan when you made that decision?
Yeah, so if we go back past that, when I signed the Scrapyard $1 million contract, the original goal was play through the 2020 Olympics, and then I was going to come back 2021, the year after the Olympics, and I was going to retire that year. That was kind of like that when you play a while and you've created a brand and stuff, you need an exit strategy. So that was kind of the strategy. And then obviously COVID happened, the Olympics get pushed back, and then I wanted to play another year after that. In Birmingham, I was kind of thinking, okay, do I want to have the opportunity to play in the States another year? What was I thinking? Because I felt like I needed to let the world know, but there wasn't really a good opportunity for me to tell our softball world, like out and give them an opportunity to come and see me play, like Derek Jeter had his
Sure.
farewell season, or multiple, Tom Brady had a farewell season. People kind of know this, right? So I wanted that opportunity, but it really wasn't there for me. So in Birmingham, I actually, Coach Malone, I told her multiple times, I was like, I think this is probably going to be it for me. I'm ready to pass the baton. I think Ali Carta is ready to take over the reins. She's capable now. She can then, Montana has come up as another power pitcher. She's in the, I've been able to mentor her through this and still be a part of that mentoring process and development process for those athletes as they need it. But I think I would almost service them better in that role than as a teammate. And they're already looking at me like that. Miyu Goto played with me under Toyota. I mentored her through. She ends up coming in for, Japan in the Olympic Games, and now she's a superstar, but I mentored her through her first 5 years. So I felt like my career as an athlete was still strong, but my value as an athlete was in off the field.
Well, and plus you have played what 13 years in Japan too. So that's the thing. Not only you're thinking about, well, do I retire from USA softball, but then there's the Japan, the Pro League, which you've made such a great career. We talked about that when you were on the last time about how much you love playing in Japan in the Pro League, and that's why you were excited to be part of that Olympics in Japan. So you had to deal with multiple different. It was like almost like multiple decisions at the same one
Right.
decision, right?
Yeah, and yeah, it really was, and it was hard to step away from USA. I think that one was probably the hardest, just because, I felt like that was everything to me. I'd played for them and represented them as an athlete for so long, but more importantly, it was what I was talking about, that dream, that motivation, that inspiration, and all the events that I was doing with, the youth, right? Like the 12U kids or the 18U kids, they're looking at me from that lens. And I loved representing Team USA.
Was
So
it
I think that part, saying goodbye to Team USA was probably the most difficult.
Well, I thought it was fitting that it would end, your last major event with them was at the World Games winning the gold in Birmingham, Alabama,
Yeah.
not too far away from Tennessee,
No,
SEC country. Looks like
that's right.
is it a full circle moment for you in a way? Was that the perfect, did you thought of that in the back of your mind?
I did. I absolutely did. It was a great opportunity. That stadium in Birmingham, the Bandits, we had
That's
a
right.
couple championships there as well. So we had some really good showings there as well. And, as in SEC country, it was definitely full circle, and it felt really good, and was just they hosted a great event as well. So shout out to Birmingham and the World Games staff there.
I remember I asked Coach Paul Malone about what was it like to be on the staff and get to work with you, and she said the biggest thing she learned that she applies to even today to her head coach is to listen. So that's what she did. She felt like she was like a sounding board. That was her best thing, listening to what you had to say, what you were feeling. That sometimes coaches, you kind of forget that, to just listen to the player and what they're thinking and how they're feeling. That can help you as a coach kind of decide and making some game plans there. And she was so blown away how you mentioned the mentorship, how you would talk to each pitcher on the staff. I think Montana Fouts was on that, and just you would mentor them and give them advice and give them feedback. Where did that come from your standpoint? Being that type of a leadership, more of, hey, I'm going to kind of take you under my wing here and show you the ropes.
Well, I think it starts with a relationship, right? So you have to get to know someone first with a relationship base before you can really start to give them advice. But if I had to be completely honest, I would shout out back to like when I was a rookie, and Lisa Fernandez and Jenny Finch and Jessica Mendoza and Stacy Newman took me under their wing and started to give me advice on different aspects of my career. I will tell you, Lisa Fernandez is the one that, told me, why don't you just, in international softball, you have to have a 3-second pause when you present the ball. She said, and I was struggling. I was like, where do I do my pause in my low position? Da, da, da. She's the one that said, hey, why don't you pause down low?
Wow.
Lisa Fernandez told me that. When we were playing on I think it was a world championship or a Pan Am team together. So I think there's definitely, you have to build the relationship first, but when those athletes, big names in our sport were, investing in me, as I was ending my career, I was like, okay, I need to start investing in other athletes a lot more.
A year ago, as you mentioned, you wrote, came out with your book you wrote, co-authored, Rise and Shine, the Monica Abbott story. It's still out there. I'd encourage people to still get it. The thing that struck me when that came out was you mentioned that in 5th grade, you declared that you wanted to be an Olympian. That was your goal.
Yes.
In 5th grade. And so now that I have you on, I have 2 questions. That back then, what was it? Why did you want to be an Olympian? From that standpoint, at 5th grade, was it you just loved watching the Olympics as a youngster? What led you to make that declaration there? Because that's not something that you hear often. Sometimes they say, "Well, I want to be a basketball player. I want to do this," but you wanted to be an Olympian. Of course, you were able to accomplish that twice over in a sport that is basically new to the Olympics. Not an easy sport necessarily to get into. It's not, as we've obviously know the history of it. It hasn't been on every time in the Olympics. But what led you to that as a 5th grader?
Yeah, so I'm not exactly sure, but I can tell you this. When I was in 5th grade, so the big project for 5th graders at that time was a state report. Okay, so I wanted to do California because I was from there, and then I wanted to do Nevada because I had been there, and then I was like, let's do Hawaii because it looks cool on TV. All those sort of fun, cool states. Like, let's do New York, right? Like all these states. So we basically had a drawing for states inside the classroom, and I got none of the states that I wanted. And I was so mad because I was stuck with like 5 states. It was like Georgia, I don't know, I'm just throwing states out there, Georgia, Kentucky, and Minnesota or something like that. And I was like, I don't want any of these states. And so my teacher assigned me Georgia. And what is very cool about this story is this state report. It was 1996. I was in 5th grade. It was the first Olympics for softball. And I wrote in my report, so I had a little Olympic section in my report because they were hosting this big event. And I wrote, I'll see you there. I'll be standing on the mound pitching or whatever. And at that time, I had just started pitching, but I apparently believed I was ready to go to the Olympics.
Oh, you foreshadowed the future there.
Yeah, I hadn't started, basketball or volleyball really yet. So
that's wild. 96 Olympics in Atlanta. It's a big motivator for you there.
Yeah.
So what was it like 12 years, later, you make the Olympic team in 08 in Beijing, which would turn out to be the last softball Olympics until Tokyo, ironically. So you get to say you were the last 2, really. But did that like, it had to be emotional when you found out you made that Olympic team, because you made the goal, one of your dreams there.
Yeah, I mean, anytime an athlete makes an Olympic team, I think it's super emotional and it's an investment. My family, I remember we got like an email of like after the Olympic tryouts, and it had the 18 athletes that were picked. And then later on they would send another on who the top 15 were. So 18 athletes, and the email went out at like 8 a.m. or something. So everyone got up and we're like huddled around the computer and like waiting for the email go in. Everyone held their breath as we read it. Luckily for me, ABB, like top alphabetical order, like I didn't have to search down the list of names. I could see my name right away on the top because of my last name. But yeah, everyone jumped for joy. We were all very, very, very excited. And it's a memory that I'll remember for a long time.
It's funny. I talked to a lot of the current, college players today, and I'll ask them, "Hey, who's your favorite player you looked up?" And three names come up a lot:
Mm-hmm.
Kat Osterman,
Yep.
Jenny Finch, and you.
Yep.
You're the three names that constantly come up. How does that make you feel that you have young players still today that were inspired in part because of your career, whether it be in college or even the USA softball? Because now, and that's what we'll get. I'll ask you shortly about the Olympics being back in LA, but being in the Olympics does have a big significant impact to young people. They watch the Olympics and they saw you playing at USA softball, and of course they saw you play professionally. They saw you play in Tennessee. That made a big difference. So a lot of players today that are playing.
Right. I mean, visibility, right? Visibility. And the great thing about Team USA and USA softball in particular is in those Olympic years, they do their grassroots tour and they go around. So in 2008, we did like a 40 or 50 game tour stop where we traveled around the country and played in front of these girls, right? We played in front of those athletes in, Bowie, Maryland, and, Hoover, Alabama, and Salinas, California. We played in these spots. So softball teams, if you're a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old or a 10U kid at that time, or you were in college at that time, you went to that game. That was the thing to do. And so we got to be in front of it. And that's why I think it's so important that visibility now with TV, podcasts, YouTube, social, all of this is just creating more opportunities for visibility and for athletes to become stars for the next generation and multiply out. But getting in front of them at an event, in the pros, and a clinic, at a school, all of those sort of things where someone that's an Olympian of my stature or professional can go and speak to these young athletes, it creates dreams, it creates motivation and inspiration, and that's what pushes athletes to the next level.
My dad does. It's a great point. We're speaking with Monica Abbott here on In the Circle on D1 Softball. You write in your book about your journey and how you ended up at Tennessee. So I'm not going to ask you about that. I want people to read the book and find
Yeah.
out there. But I am curious, when you look back at making that decision to go to Tennessee, have you ever wondered wow, how so well that worked out and what a big decision that was? Because I would argue that you and Peyton Manning are the two most recognizable athletes from Tennessee. Like when Tennessee athletics get brought up, you and Peyton Manning get brought up. Peyton Manning usually is at football game. People bring you up at Tennessee softball games. So you've become, and you're a Hall of Famer. You were the first All-American there ever. When you look back in that time in Tennessee, what pops into your head?
Let me say first, the Tennessee chapter in the book is probably my favorite chapter that we wrote because there's definitely some really cool full circle moments and stories that really showcase, I think, what it takes to be a college athlete and the struggles and triumphs you go through. But definitely one of my favorite chapters. When I think about my decision to go to Tennessee, I literally think that God played a part. This was God's hand putting me at that school. Because I did have opportunity to go at the time, to the top softball schools, and Tennessee they were a bubble team. They were coming up, they were getting votes, but they had new coaching staff. They were turning the program around. And I felt like I could go there and make an impact. I felt like I could go there and create something really cool and be a part of something. And I was really excited about the fact that they didn't just love sports, they loved women's sports. And not every school does that, unfortunately. You know, it's changing a lot more these days, but at the time, to be able to celebrate women's sports as much as they celebrated men's, that played a huge role for me.
It did. No, it was a great chapter. I encourage people again, check out the book on there. I'm curious, how do you feel you're different now? What are some things you know now you wish you would have known when you were playing at Tennessee and even in your younger pro?
Everything.
Everything. There you go.
Everything. You know, when you're in college and you're 18 to 22 or 21, like you're in this, like you're in a bubble, you're like a little narrow focused. I was very much that way. I was narrow focused. I definitely wish I had been more outgoing earlier. I wish I had understood my pitching a little bit better when I went to college. I knew what I was doing. I couldn't verbalize that, hey, your front foot didn't get down, or your thumb went out when you snapped it. That's why it screwed instead of rised. Like, I couldn't verbalize those things. I had to learn that while I was there. Gosh, there's so many things. I wish I had been able to be more myself and not so, I don't know, just not so wrapped up in everything. Just like hindsight's 2020, you know, like you're so narrow focused and you're in it, and then you leave college and you're watching college softball on TV and you're like, wow, she's going to get a hit here, or like, oh, she's going to strike out this girl on this pitch right here. You can foresee things happening. And you're like,
Yeah.
why couldn't I foresee it happening when I was playing, when I was standing in the circle? Why didn't I know that, like, hey, Monica, if you get your front foot down a little bit earlier and you're a little bit longer on your release, your changeup will not go 60 miles an hour.
I guess you got to go through it, right?
I did not learn that until I left college.
That's why you go through it, right? You got to,
Yeah.
that you can't know it all right away. It'd be too easy.
Yeah, no.
It'd be too
Yeah,
easy.
it'd be way too easy. We wouldn't want that.
Oh man, that's pretty good. I mentioned obviously the Olympics now is going to be officially back in Los Angeles. What's your reaction to that? And what advice would you give whoever's going to be on the U.S. national team in 28, or even any of the softball players in that Olympic stage? And what advice maybe you would give LA as far as hosting that softball event in LA?
Okay. Advice for, first off, LA 2028, that's a huge deal for our sport. And then hopefully we're going to get Melbourne
Brisbane, yeah, 2032, yeah. Mm-hmm.
in Australia. So just putting that out as well. Just honestly, it creates opportunities for female athletes and women in our sport. The Olympics is the highest level of our sport, and softball needs to be in it. So it's not like, you know, we have a huge pro league or something else. It's the highest level for softball. For the athletes, I think the biggest thing that I would say is, one, enjoy the moment in the process, but I would almost tell you over prepare yourself for everything. Think about not so much like, how do I swing at this pitch? Obviously the softball stuff you're going to have to over prepare for, right? The game's gotten better, but think about things like, okay, what if I'm tired? What if it's raining that day? What if I'm really nervous? How do I prep that stuff? What if my adrenaline's pumping and I can't control it? Okay. What if the umpire don't just hit, like, what if the umpire has a wide zone? What if the umpire's zone changes every inning? Like, these sort of things happen in the Olympic Games. And you don't always think about some of those things when you're preparing, because I don't know why, you just don't as an athlete, but you do have to deal with that stuff. Like, what if you're late because, the bus is late? I remember in the 2008 games, we were playing Japan. This is a famous story. I don't know, hopefully some of you have heard it already, but this is a famous story. We're playing Japan, we're all warmed up, and Kat is going to pitch this game. We're in pool play. And this is basically, whoever wins this game wins the pool. And so you want to win the pool so you have better seating in the middle rounds. And so we're playing Japan. Kat's gonna start, so I'm not even thinking about starting or anything like this. And Coach Candrea goes up to the home plate, they exchange lineups, and Japan is pitching like their number 2 or 3 pitcher. They're not pitching their number 1. So he comes back to the dugout and he tells Stacy Newman and Coach Chuck D'Arcy, who's the pitching coach, and myself, and he says, Monica, you're starting this game. You have 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Wow.
10 minutes before so 10 minutes before the game starts, 8 minutes before I have to be out there for national anthem and all of that. And he goes back in, he enters me into the game as the pitcher. And I had to warm up and be ready to go to face Japan in 8 minutes.
No pressure.
30, most pitchers normally we'll take 30-minute warm up about, this is a good rule of thumb, 30 minutes. And so I was in the bullpen rushing to warm up. But in that Olympic tour, we prepared for that. We did okay, Monica, you have to do a hurry up warm up. What is the warm up that you're going to do that's going to take you 5 minutes or 10 minutes? You don't have 30 minutes. The bus was late. Because that's how you transport from the village. You have to go through security. There's all these processes in the Olympics, like things that just take a lot of time. And so we're late. Our warm-up time is going to be cut short. Can you be ready in 5 minutes? Can you be ready in 10 minutes? And so all of the pitchers went through these routines. So when Coach Candrea came back to the dugout and said, hey, you're in, our first was like, oh my gosh, we're pitching. Oh my gosh, don't panic. And then we're like, don't panic. We're ready. We can do this. We can do this. Fastball. Okay, I'm ready. And so anyways, I ended up going in and, Crystal Bustos probably hit 2 home runs and we won.
It worked out.
It worked out. We ended up winning the game. But, just having that feeling of over prepared for things that may obviously prepare for your pitchers, prepare your body, prepare your mindset, your skill, all of that stuff. But don't forget to prepare for things like if you can't do your normal routine, if you don't have time to visualize or you don't have time, it's raining or it's really hot or, you're sweating profusely because you're really nervous. Like, what are those things? Prepare for those things, and the team that manages those the best is going to be more successul.
8 minutes notice. Man,
yeah.
Holy smokes. That's well, you worked out. You figured it out. I mean, that's a good lesson there. Always be ready, right? Never know when your number could be called, no matter what.
Yeah, that was obviously not an ideal situation, but we pulled it off.
I love the gamesmanship too. Like, oh, we got to change pitchers.
I know, right? Like, oh my gosh, their number 1's not starting.
Oh my goodness, that's wow.
You're going in.
You're going in.
Okay, coach.
What are you gonna say? No, like, okay, I'm ready to go.
Okay, coach, I'm ready. I
think. That's great. You mentioned Kat, obviously. Last time you on, you made it clear you were so excited that she decided to join you in that Olympic team. You talked her in, wanted to talk to her. Please come back, because you two are really good friends for a long time. What did it mean to share that one last Olympics together? And I'm fascinated. Both of you still to this day are giving back to the game. Whether it be lessons, whether it be talking to young people, you give back to the game. But what did it mean to share that last stage in the Olympics with her together one more time?
Yeah, I think it was awesome. We've played together on Team USA. We know each other's history. We complement each other in our pitching ways. Of course, I think one of kind of the fun thing was fire and ice. We kind of nicknamed ourselves as like, I throw the fire and she kind of throws the ice of, she throws slower, a lot more spinny type of pitcher. So just that was kind of a fun way that we kind of took our bond to the next level, and that our teammates rallied around too. They even made some shirts at one point. So just kind of a fun thing. And, being able to have Kat on the Olympic team and being able to share being someone to back up the knowledge that I was saying, like, hey, like, this is how it's going to be. It's good when you say it, but when you have someone else to back you up, it does
Right.
help. And of
Takes a,
course, her own knowledge that I would back up as well. So
it's a good 1-2 punch. Yeah, it's a nice take some of the load off. Fire and Ice. I've never heard about the shirt part. I've heard about the Fire and Ice nickname, but I've not heard about the shirt. That's something. Wow. Is there a way we can find out how this shirt looks like, or is this like top secret here?
no, I'll see if I can get you a photo.
All right. That's pretty sweet. No, that's pretty awesome there. When you look back at your career, you're a Honda Award winner. You won the National Player. Do you look back at your accomplishments, awards? Is there one that stands out that maybe you're the most proud of all the achievements you've had and records you've had?
At collegiately?
Or just even pro, international, anything that stands out?
I think things that stand out to me, I think the NCAA strikeout record, I think that was a big one for me. And then I think the NCAA wins is a big one as well. That are both, I think, I'm really proud of. And then taking a team to the Women's College World Series for the first time is something I think is incredibly special. If you're a team that's never been, a college that's never been, and you go for the very first time to Oklahoma City, like, being able to get your team there is just a moment for that college that can be unmatched. And I was able to do that with the 2005 Tennessee team, and it was incredible, those memories. I even have a little bit of chills talking about it, just because it does mean so much, not only to us as athletes, but to the university and to the alumni and to the fans of the Tennessee softball program. So I think that being the first in that aspect is just incredible. And then professionally, I think when I obviously awards and all of that and wins are really great, but when I think about my career as a whole, I'm really proud of the fact that as I played over the years, I feel like I got better.
Yeah.
I definitely had a growth mindset that was instilled in me from my college days, where I just continued to get better as an athlete. I started to throw harder. I started to, like, tinker with the way that I worked out and trained or ate or thought about the game. And I just continued to evolve. And for me, that's probably one of the proudest things about my career.
Rightfully so. That was tremendous. And I covered a lot of your games in the pros. I'll never forget you had to deal with all these long lines of fans that wanted to get your autograph, and you were patient. You signed just as many as you could before security would say, you got to go. We got to get going. But you've always been nice there. You've always been incredible for that standpoint in the game. Tell the people now, you're obviously we're dabbling into the broadcasting side, but I know you're still involved in other areas. Where can people kind of follow you, and kind of what do you want to do? Do you have other goals outside of softball that you want to accomplish, or maybe it's within softball? Obviously broadcasting is a part of it, but is there other goals you have left?
Yeah, so you can find information on me, obviously, on my website. That's going to be the best place to go, with monicaabbott.com. And then social, my biggest platform is probably going to be Instagram. That's where I spend most of my time Instagram. But that's where you can find out more information. My goal is to, get obviously more information out there, so virtually, so that there's different levels that people can get, qualified information, right? I would consider myself a qualified person to speak on pitching and to teach pitching. So different price points, different levels that people can enter to learn pitching or become a better pitcher. And then hopefully some big events here coming up. A few events a year to help take athletes to the next level. That's kind of where I'm at.
Couple of athletes that are taking their game to the next level is two that you probably follow pretty close, is Pickens and Gottschall at Tennessee.
Yes.
When you see them, what comes to your mind when you see them, especially Pickens, who people are just marvel at how hard she throws and her explosiveness? She's in the mix for SEC Pitcher of the Year as we talk, but what goes to your mind when you see those two?
Yeah, I think they are incredible. I love how they're pitching right now. I love their determination. I love Peyton Gottschall's mindset and focus, and honestly, her pace of play in the game, I think, is really, really good. As a pitcher, just her pace of the play, being able to create that rhythm for the team. Carlin, I think the consistency piece, right? The consistency of speed, but more importantly, the consistency of the low zone is really good for her with that speed. So she's really able to bring it on that low, that knee height, low outside corner and low inside corner. And that's huge for just zone separation, and also being able to, it's hard to hit, 70 plus miles an hour on the low inside corner. That's difficult.
That
It's
is
just
very.
hard. It's hard. But no, yeah, I was going to say, we're actually working on taking, we have an event in the mix. We haven't announced it yet, but in early August, a 3-day event for our top power pitchers in the country. So look to see that release sometime later this month. And hopefully we'll have a few of those power pitching NCAA athletes, including, in the mix as coaches.
Folks, that's why you got to follow her. She's going to get that information there. Subscribe to her newsletter on the website, because I know you give a lot of options there. You do great stuff there. And make sure you all tune in to her color commentating, which is exciting. NC State, Virginia, April 12th. Virginia Tech, April 23rd. And Missouri, South Carolina, May 4th. Welcome to the media side, Monica. That's all.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Thanks for doing this. I know it's a busy time, but always a fan. Looking forward to hearing you on the commentating. But thanks for everything you do for the sport of softball and helping it grow the game. And thanks for taking the time to talk to us here on In the Circle on D1 Softball.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric.